Howdy, everybody. Welcome. Kind of a little bit different type of stream or video than you're used to seeing from me. Today, I have a friend of mine who goes by PsyClops, and today we're going to be breaking down Super Bowl 2024. So, hey, brother, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I only done a couple podcasts before, and this is gonna be the first one on my own channel. So I picked the perfect time to come back, in my opinion, because I like to focus on these public rituals and stuff. And there's no better time than the Super Bowl to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, when you had a bit of a hiatus, and for those that are seeing this link through Twitter or probably familiar with Sai, as we've shared a lot of material between each other over the 2 or so years that we've been friends, and we originally met on Twitter. Kind of similar material, similar breakdowns, and as things happen through DMs and conversations get started and lead us to situations like these where we're sharing a screen. And yeah, so Super Bowl 2024, probably one of the bigger events of the year when it comes to kind of social events, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, growing up, sports was life. Sports was religion. So I mean, the Super Bowl is one of those events that obviously people who don't even care about football are watching it. Just they don't want to miss out. So you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. And, people have seen me talk about symbology, language, imagery, and all of these subjects. But again, saying that this video is going to be a bit out of the norm for myself, just kind of analyzing society as a whole through the lens of the Super Bowl, the halftime show, city, location, time, date. All of these things are significant. And from an outside view, it may seem a bit silly, right? To be talking about the start times and the dates and the latitude and longitude and the cities chosen and the teams chosen. But as we kind of unfold this episode, this chat together, we're going to be showing some interesting correlations and, breaking down some numerical relations, some etymology, some etymological correlations, and a lot. So why don't I'm kind of going to try and take a back seat in this one and let your research speak for itself and just kind of tag along with you. So take us all on a ride. And you said you wanted to start perhaps talking about last year's Super Bowl. Maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah, perfect. I'm just going to share my screen.
And again, everybody, thanks for joining us. Yeah, like I mentioned several times, a bit different, but kind of my bread and butter. Part of what I got started on Twitter doing was similar things like this. So yeah. Anyways, sure, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, here we go. All right. Yeah. So starting out with last year's Super Bowl. So we had the Chiefs versus the Eagles. And the reason I want to start out with last year's Super Bowl is because there was so much there. I actually posted a lot about it, but I just didn't even get to complete everything that was going on. And when I'm looking at all the patterns that I'm seeing so far this year, it's a lot of the similar stuff. So that's why I thought it was important to talk about both of them at the same time and link them together. Plus, the Super Bowl didn't happen yet. So, after it happens, we can come back and further break down this year. But so that,
yeah, I think that's, sorry to cut you off. I think that's going to be something that's really interesting. And since this is a bit out of the norm, at least for my material on my channel, I think this will be kind of a good perhaps introduction for some of my listeners, and a good way to kick off your channel as well. We'll get we'll discuss pre-Super Bowl symbolism, kind of the things we expect to see, and then we'll kind of come back and reanalyze everything for round 2. Definitely think that should happen. Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Yeah. But yeah, so last year we had the Chiefs beating the Eagles, right? And what I took away from last year's Super Bowl is that it was a king kill ritual. So last year's Super Bowl took place in Phoenix area, formerly University of Phoenix Stadium. Obviously, the Phoenix represents a rebirth, and the eagle is the Phoenix, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Chiefs have the arrowhead, so it's like the spear of destiny, taking out the Phoenix, and the Phoenix can represent Christ, and then the eagle also represents the ego, so killing the self, and that's what all these rituals and all this programming links back to, is them leading this initiation rebirth into this new age, but in a corrupted psyop way, of course, where it's not meant to actually help anybody, maybe just get them possessed. But yeah, so last year the Super Bowl was on the 33rd parallel, and I noticed that both Kansas City and Philadelphia are located right just about on the 40th parallel. And I remember asking you about the 40th parallel previously, and you were saying that you view the 40th parallel as in a higher level than the 33rd parallel, correct?
Yeah, dimensionally. When we talk about the 33rd parallel versus the 40th parallel, these are the kind of the things we're going to get into, you guys, is things perhaps that no one's really thought relevant, but certainly are. And again, kind of taking a step backwards there, this symbolic nature of the spearhead in the eagle, right? Slaying the bird, slaying the Phoenix, it being in Phoenix. They decided to name Phoenix what it was because it was a city reborn from the ashes of a previous civilization. And those of you following along with the channel, and in my Anomalous American material, or just my posts over the years, I've shown how important that is, and that these sporting events are often kind of subconscious. They're touching on the subconscious, and like you were talking about, slaying the ego, and the symbolic language that we're going to be using this episode can be a bit hard to follow, so kind of a heads up on that one, but hopefully it still makes sense as we get through it. But yeah, the parallels, very important. When we kind of look at this coming Super Bowl in a map, you're going to see the kind of journey from Kansas City to San Francisco, obviously on very similar planes. You could take a highway from one to the other, and with Vegas is not quite, but essentially lying between the two, and Las Vegas being a very similar story to Phoenix. And obviously the only thing changed here is that we have the 49ers facing the Chiefs. But yes, the parallel, there was quite a powerful event that took place in Philadelphia for the NFL. NFL was experiencing its first downturn in popularity, viewership, and they had a ceremony at the Philadelphia Museum of Art that kind of collected the consciousness, so to say, and directed it towards improving, so to say, the magical power of the Super Bowl. But yeah, there's an old saying that the Philadelphia Museum of Art lies on one of the most powerful ley lines or nodes. People have heard me mention this before when I talk about cathedrals and churches and temples and all of these things. But anyways, that ties in with latitude and longitude, and these so-called ley line, dragon lines correspond to these places. And city centers, all the major cities of the world are built on these crosses, these kind of etheric serpents that lie below the ground. When they cross each other, that's where a city is built. And water often follows the same type of structure. You'll find that, you can't have a city without an underground water supply or an above ground or both. They're usually tied together. And that water being kind of that, again, current, the language that goes into electrical phenomenon, as well as, the physical representations of water. But anyways, you'll find that energy is the key here. So that was a long-winded answer there. But yeah, locations and latitude and longitude and the teams that are picked, because part of what we're going to be alluding to here is that the Chiefs and the 49ers were chosen, and that the Super Bowl is picked long before, and that these teams actually don't compete, so to say, in the way that you think they do. This is more of a ritual, in a sense, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I'm actually not as extreme as everyone is when it comes to all of the players intentionally or
No,
having
I
a
agree.
set script. Like, because there's some people out there that think that to get their desired numerology and everything, every single play is scripted to an exact T, where every player knows where they're going to catch the ball and everything like that. I'm not that far into it, but 100%, if you watch these games, I mean, as an Eagles fan last year, we all saw the holding call that swung the game at the end of the game. So
Yeah.
So you see that stuff all the time. But no, I remember being really interested, obviously, in the 40th parallel, because I grew up, like 30 minutes outside of Philly. I went to school there in Philadelphia, and that was actually where I had my near-death experience and whole rebirth and everything in Philadelphia. So it was just kind of crazy when you told me how important that ley line is.
Yeah, the 40th, again, the number 40 is symbolic of, 40 days in the desert. And the root word for quarantine comes from the number 40, and that the originality or conception of the quarantine was a protocol followed by ships, that when they came from abroad, they spent 40 days outside of the port for many reasons. But again, the symbolical nature, the kind of stacking of meanings. So yeah, the 40th parallels, you can think of it kind of like a barrier, an energetic barrier. And it was often referenced as the end of the ice sheet, although it stretched far below the 40th parallel. That was kind of always the reference made, that it was the hold fast barrier in that sense. But yeah, it's a magical reference as well. What are we looking at here?
All right. Yeah. So this is just some further pieces here that show that the ritual aspect. So this is Damar Hamlin. So this is the guy whose heart stopped on the field, and he had to be resuscitated. And so he was at the Super Bowl last year with this jacket, and obviously we could see it's Christ on the cross, but with a funny, ridiculous looking face. And there were just a lot of things going on with Damar Hamlin, that he was like a part of these rituals. So I remember, so last year it was reported that he was going to make his return and play again the day that he was in Phoenix receiving an award. And it was kind of funny now, like the guy wasn't even any special player or anything like that. And then, he goes through this, and now he's like a celebrity, hanging out with everyone else and whatnot.
It's funny, his name is Damar, right? The root of that too is the same root that is damage, harm, damage, hurt, injury, loss. Another thing you're going to see us doing a lot in this episode, y'all, is talking about etymology. We're going to be breaking down simple things from locations of cities to the names of stadiums to the names of players and musicians and many other things. And you'll find that names and all these things play a very, very vital role in all of this, the kind of drumming up energetically. So, yeah, no
Yeah,
coincidence there that they chose a player named DeMar. Anyways, keep going. Sorry.
yeah. But yeah, so as I was saying previously, all the programming that I've been finding is just all about this, rebirth of the individual. And at the core of this is the goddess, right? And like people like Graham Hancock talk about, like, when you take ayahuasca, you have to come in contact with Mother Ayahuasca, like Mother Nature, basically. And so that's the role that I saw Rihanna playing last year. And I realized that the most recent album that she had before the Super Bowl was Anti, and I found there was this whole video that she put online that was about the album. It wasn't a music video though; it was just like this story, and so much about this is just super, super blatant. So we have Rihanna here, and it goes through like different stages of like the rebirth process. And the first one, they show these two twins, the two children. And I believe that represents, in the rebirth process, your inner child. And it's just like the inner masculine and inner feminine, right? And
Yeah, for people that are joining me and familiar with the things I talk about, conscious and subconscious is going to be a kind of a strong foundation to a lot of what we're discussing here, and the ego, yeah, just throwing that out there. So, anyways, keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
yeah, and it's all about like I said, like this new era. Because like Blavatsky said too, that like 2025 was basically like the new era beginning, right? And we're in 2024 now. But yes, there was a lot of Janice references with this stuff. So there was this Twitter account that was like, it's like a separate thing, but it was like all about the theme of this album. And it was called The Key Holder, and there were like a lot of references to like finding the keys in this video. And it says here, the new era is here. Blah, blah, blah. My time in your world is finished. She and I are one. This one is, there's a lot of cryptic stuff in this one, and I could do a whole video just like going through the thread I made on this one. But yeah, I mean, there's a part too where she looks into a mirror and she starts like she has all these spastic movements, like as if she's getting possessed while she's looking into the mirror. So again, like what you're saying, like the subconscious mind, like this is the symbolism that you see everywhere. Like, and we're gonna see it with this year's Super Bowl too. And okay, so and this programming, right? So the idea of the goddess in the rebirth process, it also relates to right. So before you have something, you have nothing. So that primordial state represents like the mother goddess. So when you're going through this rebirth process and you're like returning back to nothing, that's why I feel like the goddess is at the core of it. And we just brought up Joseph Campbell too. So I feel like he's talking about all that same stuff, correct?
Yeah, and I've mentioned him quite a few times on my channel before. Joseph Campbell, some of my favorite books of all time, but he often discusses this kind of hero's journey, the hero mythos, the kind of the idea that we're all living the same life, um, but reimagined in a billion different ways, kind of all for one, one for all. We're all pieces of the whole. And when he describes consciousness, he uses very similar language. And there's these Super Bowls, movies, books, a lot of the base for any of those types of things comes from identifying and acknowledging and using these potent symbols that that resonate with the populace, whether they really understand it or not. And yeah, the conscious and the subconscious mind, the kind of, again, you mentioned Janice and that account, the key holder, right? The key holder is the janitor. The name janitor obviously comes from Janice, and all of the ancient depictions of him have him holding keys to doors and portals and gateways. He's often depicted with two faces, sometimes four, sometimes eight. And this deity is everywhere. He's the god of gods, and he exists on all continents and all religions, just under different names. Again, long-winded response there, but get back to what you're showing.
Yeah, no, yeah, and Janice is such an important focus too, because in watching all these movies, doing all these decodes and everything, if you want to understand what the messages they're getting across, if you really just pay attention to the masculine, the relationships between male and female in the story, that's how they're painting a lot of the picture and getting a lot of the messages across. And for example, there's this commercial from last year's Super Bowl. So it's Adam and Eve in the garden, right? Eve takes a bite from the forbidden fruit. And they're talking about avocados from Mexico, right? And
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting because this year too, there's a lot of Atlantis stuff going on.
Yeah, what's funny is that before the avocado was called the avocado, its nickname was the alligator pear.
Oh wow.
And the mythology was that it was the only fruit to survive the destruction of Atlantis was the avocado.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a real thing? That's crazy, actually.
Yeah, actually I shared I'll look it up while you keep going.
Okay. But at the end of the video, they just have this random insertion of the Statue of Liberty, right? And the Statue of Liberty represents that goddess archetype that I'm talking about. And so I wanted to make this connection too. So when I thought when they reference the avocados from Mexico in that commercial, I was thinking about so because you were telling me before about the link between radium and the forbidden fruit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, the elixir of life. It's also kind of the decay of matter. It's symbolic of the human consciousness intertwining with physical matter.
Right. And this was really interesting. So this is the newest Black Panther movie. And remember, again, there's a focus on the goddess again in the Black Panther movies because the original Black Panther died. And then in the new one, they had his sister take his place. And so until the release of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, vibranium was only thought to come out of Wakanda, with many characters seeking to infiltrate this secretive nation to get their hands on the valuable metal. Revealed that a vibranium meteor had also hit the Gulf of Mexico, gifting the Yucatan people with the ability to survive underwater, where they founded the underwater nation of Talocan or whatever. And I mean, yeah, I feel like that's I feel like that's a gold mine for you. That right there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And all of these kind of sci-fi mythos type stories, again, having the kind of Jungian and Campbell roots play off the foundational premise of a war within, light and dark, good and evil. This is always the kind of conceptions used, or the outlines used for any of these stories or movies or whatever it is, comic books, whatever whatever, pick your poison. As far as literary works, the roots are going to always come down to these types of simple premises. And then speaking to the symbolic nature of things, again, that's kind of the mirror image speaking to the subconscious mind. And what part of what we've been doing in our time together and as friends, and what we're presenting here, is just kind of using the literal mind as a filter to understanding the metaphorical mind, or the subconscious, and why these advertisers and movies and stories, through the power of visual aid, because before it was only literary, you didn't really have visual aids except art, which art touches on that, but we won't get into that in this episode. And why television, the black screen, the scribing screen, the black mirror, has played such a vital role in tapping into the subconscious mind of the masses. And we're kind of trying to peer into that world through the literal mind, to help everybody, ourselves included, kind of see things for what they are. Again, long-winded response there, but yes, tapping into that subconscious part of the human psyche, visual aid is very important.
Yeah, 100%. And having you talked before about like there being like a meteor that landed in the region that was significant.
Yeah, Chicxulub crater in the Gulf of Mexico. It's been referenced a million times as what wiped out the dinosaurs. And I've posted a lot of material. I have a radium series, again, for my listeners or anybody who's tuning in that's new to my work. I have a series about radium where I talk about scientists analyzing meteors, comets, and their opinions of kind of a mythical and mysterious creation story, alien introduction, all these kind of fanciful ideas, but again, it relating to radium and the kind of magical properties of radium. And yeah, the Wakanda story, I've made a lot of posts on that in the past, talking about the meaning of Wakanda and how it relates to magic and the magi, and it ties in with this universal subconscious kind of creation power that's within us all. That the difference between a wizard and a warlock, and this same type of idea of manipulating consciousness, one person at a time. But yeah, the movies and the Black Panther are the story there, again, between the hidden technology, the kind of Atlantean story, and what was going on here in the Gulf of Mexico. There's sprinkles of truth in all of these stories, obviously, because that's just how it has to be. That's going to pull at those subconscious or akashic or past life, however you want to look at it, etheric memories that exist in all of us. And that's why we're drawn to certain movies. Certain movies are hits, and I always make the Avatar reference, but obviously this movie here that you're talking about, and Annihilation, which we'll talk about here in a second, really touch on this subject matter a lot.
Yeah.
The superhero mythos is almost always radium tangent, and they're always touching on these kind of mythical powers given to man by a substance or a catastrophe or a hypnotic effect or a altar,
Radiation
right?
experiments,
an experiment, an evil government. But yeah, and an altar, right? The kind of superhero mythos is always that you have the human walking the streets in the daytime as themselves, right? The literal representation. And then the subconscious representation of themselves would be that superhero and the manipulation of that symbolically. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you already know what I'm going to say about Annihilation. Again, Annihilation is probably another one that's a classic for you. With the shimmer from the meteor that landed in Florida.
Mhm.
And at the end of the movie, Natalie Portman's character is faced against her doppelganger, who like mirrors her movements, right? So that's all the same stuff we're talking about. And
the kind of historical but also literal representation of a apocalypse or some kind of dramatic event that kind of breaks the barrier between the conscious and the subconscious mind, right? Often there's like a car accident or a war or a meteor or a tidal wave or something along these lines that either cause the fraction between the two hemispheres or blend the two personalities together. And yeah, Annihilation, for those who haven't seen it, touches on this a lot. There's an event, mankind is kind of thrown into this apocalyptic type setting, and the main character, Natalie Portman, is kind of coming to grips with the reality as we know it melting away, and this alter or another version of herself becomes something that she can actually physically identify with or see. At least she thinks she can. Whether or not it's hallucination or not, we don't know. But this kind of falling away of reality as we know it is an important part of this. Music, as you've already touched on lightly, and we'll get into more, music videos, they really touch on this, I think, the most. When you say that the percentage of music videos that show the alter, the separation of conscious and subconscious mind. But yeah, I don't want to ramble too much, which is what I'm really good at doing. So
no,
get back to where you were going there.
I was actually just about to say, when you were going on that rant, how like I definitely appreciate you being here for this, because you're just saying a lot of what I want to say, but putting it much better than I could put it. So yeah, don't feel bad if you want to go on a rant.
This isn't something I make too many videos about, so I'm going to stumble a lot. So again, for those of you tuning in, thanks for being here. And there's going to be a lot of uhs and ands and ums from me, which is kind of normal. Yeah. But material that they won't be used to me presenting on this channel. But yeah, that's kind of the fun of it. But yeah, so give me your take on Annihilation, please.
Well, okay. So there is the interesting storyline too about how they had all of the men go out and try to research the shimmer, but they couldn't do it. So they decided to switch it up, and they made like an all-female team of like, here we go, 3 other women, and So again, that's what I'm saying. Like there's this focus on like this feminine energy. In the
subconscious energy is what you're referencing with the
right.
They create a team of women, so a nod to the subconscious, that they're able to experience this because it's not a material experience, it's a subconscious immaterial experience.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually watched Jay Dreamer's video on Annihilation, and I thought that was really interesting because he linked it all to like the North Pole, Mount Meru.
Yeah, the shimmer. Yeah, yeah, Jay's great. We've done an episode together. His decodes are fantastic. But yeah, the kind of magnetic aurora borealis type show.
Yeah.
I don't know really how else to put it. But how do we tie this back into the Super Bowl before my audience gets too far away from that subject?
Well, okay. So the reason I was bringing up some of that stuff, I guess, is because there's the Atlantis connections with this year's Super Bowl.
Okay, perfect. Let's get into some of those.
Okay. So, well, Usher is from Atlanta. and Usher is performing at the Super Bowl halftime show. And
Someone in chat was just mentioning him in a funny way. The only event will be Usher exposing Taylor. The rest I won't read. But yeah, that's hilarious. We've talked about this already. But yeah, so going to Usher from Atlanta.
Okay.
Why don't we, since we already have your screen share, talk about your Atlanta reference, and then let's pull up some etymology, and then kind of get into his tour poster that you shared with me, and break down his name and start kind of correlating some of those Janice references into all of this.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, I need to.
So Atlantis, is there more to him being born in Atlanta?
Yeah, well, I was just gonna switch to once again bringing up. I'm sorry. Wait, I need to change my screen share to a different window. All right, wait 1 second. Let me just switch this. Here we go. So I already sent a couple of these images to you. So here we have, this is just Usher, and he just came out with the album today before the Super Bowl. And we have the cover art here. Yeah. So once again, we have the forbidden fruit, which is what, we were just talking about with last year's Super Bowl. So it's playing a video now. But yeah, he has the peach.
And the serpent in his ring looks like a serpent wrap around his finger.
Right. Perfect. Yeah. But yeah, so he has the peach there. And yeah, so I know there was like a lot of there were stories about like this what were they calling it? They were calling it like an atmospheric river or something over the Las Vegas area during the Super Bowl. And they were talking about like potential flooding in the area.
Part of that symbolic nature leading up to this again. The biblical references when it comes to this Super Bowl is really powerful. Not to cut you off, a flood is coming, right, to the Las Vegas area just in time for the Super Bowl. And we have what do you take away from the symbology of the peach and the cross?
Well, I'm trying to find a better picture here. Well, so 1 second. So he has the cross on the album cover. Here we go. So yeah, this is the album cover that just came out. Okay. And we have the cross. We have the cross there, and there's a symbolism with there's 11. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 11 right there, and it's also like 7 vertical, 4 horizontal, and it's the same pattern I found with Travis Scott. Has like a very, very similar logo where you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 4 across. And what I found that to represent is this idea of the union of the heart and the mind, and that people have 2 separate torus fields, right? I don't know what your take is on that, but I've heard people say that the idea that we have like 1 vertical torus field for our entire body, and then 1 like horizontal, stemming from the heart. And that 47 number is super significant this year.
What's the Cactus Jack from again?
That's a Travis Scott's logo.
That's what it was. Okay. And you showed me that before, but I had forgotten. We should also talk about the tattoo on the back of Usher's head before I forget. Not right now, but before we move on, I want to touch on that because you can see it pretty clearly in the album art. You can't in this image, but he describes it as the Kundalini and the serpent energy rising to the crown. I'm sure that plays some reference there as he has it in the an important placement there. But what do you get from the peach? And I love the 7 symbolism and the 11. We'll have to get into Janice and the cross more, but
yeah. And I was going to tie in the 47 with this year's election, right, too, and all that stuff.
The 47, what I must have.
So this year is the 47th presidential, or whoever wins this election is the 47th president.
Right. Does that, and I missed the correlation with the album art. Was there one?
Yeah, because of the cross.
Oh, the 4 and 7. I apologize. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Yep.
And the cross also relates to the X symbolism that we're seeing this year over and over again.
Yeah, with Twitter and the solar eclipse and
which brings us to
this is the one that I remember you sharing with me. This is really important.
Yeah.
Tell us what you see.
So this is Usher's tour, right? That he's going to start later this year for this album. And it says past, present, and future. So, of course, we have the Janice that you're talking about, the past, present, and future. And Janice is depicted as with 2 heads often, but also with 3 heads, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. And the imagery here, we have it's like the eclipse symbolism, basically. And
with the clock, yeah.
Yeah. And the light is stemming out like right over the X right here.
Mm-hmm.
And this 2024 eclipse obviously is going to make the X with the 2017 eclipse.
Right.
Yeah.
And where do they cross again? I forgot already. Texas somewhere? Or?
No, it's
Missouri?
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Is it Missouri?
It's around there. I guess we could just type it in. Here we go. So it does go through Texas, yeah, but it makes the X right through the middle of America. And I don't know what your opinion is on what this eclipse signifies, but you might have even been on the show with him, but I remember Robert Phoenix talking about this eclipse, something about it energetically signaling some, domestic, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he was saying like some riots and like some Civil War type, level, like, whenever like the Black Lives Matter riots were going on and everything like that. He was talking like race riots and, all the immigrants, like them just like flooding in the immigrants and trying to like set up some sort of potentially like riots, maybe relating to the election, possibly.
Yeah. And shout out Universal Magic Man, a guy in our chat who's made some of my favorite deco videos of all time. Made a comment that he's wearing the cross on his back like Christ would have on his way to be crucified, the death of the sun, aka sun in a solar eclipse. Yeah, so the solar eclipse, obviously the solar symbol is probably one of the most prominent symbols ever used. And it's all over the place. But yeah, I definitely noticed that, the cross on his back. And then you showed the previous, that jacket that had Christ on the back of the jacket. And the gentleman's name, he died on the field and was brought back to life, reincarnated, so to say. But yeah, so it looks like it goes right over St. Louis or in that vicinity. Yeah. And no coincidence there. In my St. Louis episode or Missouri episode, I talk a lot about the potency of St. Louis. St. Louis in astrological reference is known as the Silver Gate. There's a lot of fetal symbology in St. Louis. And then we're traveling along the route from St. Louis to San Francisco, which is known as the Golden Gate. The Silver Gate was known as the moon, the Golden Gate, the sun, that the souls enter the physical realm through the moon and exit through the sun, the Golden Gate. And so we have the two teams, right? Kansas City, although not in St. Louis, but on the St. route. The Kansas City Chiefs with their spear are meeting the San Francisco 49ers. So it's almost like you're traveling from the Silver Gate towards the Golden Gate, and they're colliding with each other, so to say, butting heads in the city of sin, Las Vegas, for this sporting event. And for, again, a lot of people who have got into this video, with us about 40 minutes in, we're kind of, my guest, PsyClops, and I are kind of showing some of the symbolic nature of these sporting events, and kind of taking a deeper dive into some of these subconscious play on words, so to say. But anyways, again, I'm going to ramble a lot here. But so Allegiant Stadium, tell us about Allegiant Stadium, and did you just bring this up as the solar reference?
So, well, sort of. And I thought it was interesting too, because this stadium is actually called the Death Star, and in Star Wars they refer to the Death Star as the moon. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, and it's in Paradise, Nevada. It's right outside Las Vegas, in Paradise. And we're seeing the Adam and Eve symbology that you shared from the previous Super Bowl commercial, and kind of the forbidden fruit again, although he's using a peach. The peach, the orange, the apple often are interchangeable when it comes to kind of this forbidden sacred fruit concept, right? The feminine eats the fruit, the subconscious being, right, we're banned from Eden, where the two hemispheres are one, into out of Eden, where we have a fractured brain and we have a subconscious and a conscious mind. One's feminine, one's masculine, Adam and Eve. And yeah, I've talked about this before, that the Garden of Eden is really not a material place, and it's a spiritual representation of soul and mind kind of in unity. And that when we were banished from the garden, we took physical form. Again, that Golden Gate, Silver Gate reference, kind of the Saturnian idea that Saturn eats his children, from lead to gold. We descend into physical form, and we have a two hemispherical brain. But yeah, sorry, but keep going with the Death Star. That's insane. I didn't hear that reference when I was digging into it.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it and see why they call it the Death Star. It's all blacked out. It's kind of scary looking.
Yeah.
It does look cool. But yeah, I think we can now go into just breaking down like the location of this year's Super Bowl.
Will you bring up etymology on your tab and just show the audience? Just do Usher real quick, so we can kind of get people familiar with etymology and just how important it really is, and you can use it for just about anything.
Yeah, we have it here. Do you want to read it?
You go ahead, please.
Servant who has charge of doors and admits people to a chamber, a hall. Porter, doorman, doorkeeper, door entrance, also mouth.
Yeah, so we're showing that in his own tour poster, he's saying past, present, future. His own name literally means doorman. So Usher is just like as close to a representation of Janice as you could get. And again, the past, present, future symbology. This is just important to touch on as we get farther into this. We'll show it more and more. But yeah, so
100%.
Let's go in that direction before I cut you off and had the etymology pulled up.
All right. Well, do you want to go to? We could talk about Las Vegas, Vega, and everything.
Well, yeah. I mean, Las Vegas, obviously, it's a kind of a dual meaning. Again, you have the literal and the subconscious representation, right? I believe it means land between. It means like valley or land between two mountains, fertile land. But again, you have the Vega reference, which exists really strongly in Phoenix as well. One of the architects who was put in charge of laying out, quote, laying out the dimensions in the city landscape of Phoenix, basically said that he was inspired by Vega. So you have the Phoenix and the Las Vegas correlation again, but as above, so below. There's going to always be a astrological correlation to what we're experiencing. I mean, sporting events in general, especially going back thousands of years, the farther back you go, they were all representations of the heavens. Man mirroring the heavens. That's what sports are. Baseball, originally designed by Phoenicians, designed to represent man's progression and mirror the heavens. And we have the same thing with the design of the football and the Vesica Pisces and the two opposing forces on the field. But yeah, so tell me about Lyra and how this is relevant.
Well, there's a few things. So first, the first one, so falling eagle. So we have the eagle again, but then the vulture was what really caught my eye. So obviously Kanye just had a live stream for his album called Vultures just last night, and I was watching it and trying to pick up on all the codes and that. But the vulture also is representative of the goddess, correct?
Yeah, I mean a flying bird, a bird is not always, but often represents air and the subconscious mind, and then of course the vulture and it's kind of the darker representation of, but yeah, subconscious. Same with the raven but yeah, go ahead, read. Tell me what you're highlighting there. I didn't see the representation.
Okay. The Egyptian goddess, Mut. But yeah, so she was associated with the primordial waters, which is, what I was talking about previously, that primordial state in the rebirth process. And, was pictures of a woman with wings of a vulture. And so Kanye, his album is Vultures. And when he went through his rebirth process, right, which was, in my opinion, a mix of, mind control and a true rebirth. But what was at the forefront of everything he was talking about during that time period? He started naming everything after his mother, Donda, who, is deceased. And he was even talking about, crazy theories like that she was intentionally sacrificed and stuff like that, and named his album Donda, his school Donda, and his live stream event for Donda had his childhood home and everything like that. So he was taking everything back to his childhood and everything. And yeah, I still have to, since the live stream was last night, I still have to go through all the lyrics on this Kanye album to get more information out of that one. Mm-hmm. But what I found really interesting here was in Greek mythology, Lyra represents the lyre of Orpheus. His music was able to quell the voices of the dangerous sirens who sang tempting songs.
Mm-hmm.
And the last time we had talked, that's what I was trying to go deep on, learning about, because I was just seeing all this stuff in the programming. And of course, Christopher Knowles goes very deep on the sirens in media and movies and everything like that. And yeah, so.
Yeah, Christopher Knowles, shout out Christopher Knowles. His siren work is the best out there for sure. It's probably the main reason I'm even familiar with the subject matter. But yeah, it exists in music to an insane extent.
Yeah, so Travis Scott's album last year, which I have so much saved up on this stuff that, it's going to be their own videos for sure. So the album that he came out with, and, he had the whole concert planned at the pyramids that was, canceled because they said he was a Satanist. So that album was timed with like the rising of Sirius and the Egyptian New Year, and him and Kanye did a live performance together in Rome. I want to say it was either August 7th or August 8th, but that's like the time period of the idea of like this Lionsgate, and that connects to like all like this new age rebirth, ascension, and everything like that. And before I go continue on this, I want to ask you, because the idea of like the Lionsgate, they put this emphasis on like the 8/8 date, August 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that's like an intentional symbolic thing just to reference radium, or if, that day specifically was just already what it was. I don't know.
I mean, I don't think it's coincidental. Especially when you're dealing with, the dog days, Sirius rising, the nature that goes along with that. Kind of a high sacrificial time. But yeah, I mean, the physical representation of the Lionsgate's Vancouver, British Columbia. They've drawn all these things out, right? And the Silver Gate again, St. Louis, the Golden Gate, San Francisco, and the Lionsgate is Vancouver, British Columbia. And there's the bridge, the gate, right? You can look at the Golden Gate. The Janice symbolism, obviously, is quite powerful there. The two towers, the reflection of the water, the mirror symbolism, right?
Yep.
That's powerful in a lot of these temple and sacred places, the reflecting pool. And again, that kind of existence of things, and the moon being very reminiscent of this too, as it was described as a mirror, kind of representing the subconscious nature of things. And, the moon decays and the sun gives life, and the moon takes life. But yeah, sorry, keep going. What's in this song?
Yeah. So yeah, he had a song on the album Utopia called Sirens, and then on the intro track as well, he says, "I hear the sirens right out the chateau." And then the outro for this intro song, once again, we have the goddess reference. Mother Earth is pregnant for the third time. And there was I don't need to find it, but there was like some Isis symbolism with the album as well.
Mm-hmm.
But what I really wanted to bring up with all this, which is maybe the most important part of all this and stuff that we've talked about before, is so he performed this album, like I said, in Rome. And so during the song Sirens, so obviously during the concert, it's just a regular camera view. Nothing crazy about it. But then during the song Sirens, for whatever reason, sorry about the Wi-Fi.
Oh, it's all good.
But yeah, so during the song Sirens, for extended periods of time, there was like this random zoomed in view of somebody wearing a Jesus chain during the song Sirens. And then right after that song plays, Sirens, Travis brought out Kanye, and they were performing their song Praise God together. And there's like some rebirth references in that. But I couldn't help but think that these siren references, and I had asked you this before, like a long time ago, if there's a possible link between the concept of the siren and the voice of God that we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And as time's going on, I've only seen more and more connections with it all. So I was wondering if you could maybe go on a little rant about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could describe it as the inner dialogue. I mean, we could go in a big tangent here and talk about Julian Jaynes and his analysis of the bicameral mind, and that, you know, mankind again had but one hemisphere, and in that time frame, he was not even conscious, at least not how we would describe it, and that man's inner voice, as we are all accustomed to our own inner voice, was actually, as he deemed it, an auditory hallucination, and that man was, again, not conscious, but more of almost like an automaton, and was receiving their commands through, again, these auditory hallucinations. And that I've referenced these kind of inner voice siren ideas. Um, people can make the possession or whatever references there, but through this kind of segmenting of the human brain, consciousness wouldn't be possible. Also, language and many other things. But yeah, the voice of God. We could go down a military tangent and talk about technologies that are obviously patented and proven that they're using to project voices into people's minds. But then you can take it and flip side and go down another tangent where we talk about, again, the Julian Jaynes reference and the bicameral mind, and that these auditory hallucinations or the voice of God. But yeah, finding exactly how they're referencing it can be a bit of a slippery slope. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's.
I think
Go ahead.
we're definitely gonna have to schedule an episode where we do like a Westworld breakdown, because I feel like that was like my introduction to a lot of what you're talking about.
Well,
'Cause
yeah,
they
when they
openly
show the
talk about.
automaton or a robot, you could easily look at it from a consciousness perspective. And, again, Westworld, the writer was well aware of Julian Jaynes and made many Julian Jaynes references um, to the whole story of Westworld. So you have automatons that have no consciousness, that are, they have a set of strict programs, and then the human, right, that through, again, this subconscious conscious dilemma, so to say, that exists, we are able to be conscious just through that mechanism alone, and that's what separates man from whatever robot or AI or however you want to describe it. But the symbolism is pretty potent. But yeah, so the voice of God, could it be that they're describing a false voice of God, or some intelligence, government driven technology? Certainly, but it could also be a reference to, again, this kind of inner dialogue voice, inner voice, um, the uniting of the two hemispheres, kind of, again, the blending, like we mentioned in Annihilation, the kind of melting away of reality as we know it, so to say, and the kind of meeting your ego, meeting your subconscious alter, in a way, right? That exists really powerfully in music today. But yeah, what's your take on it? Because you could look at it from two perspectives, and how exactly I think they're referencing it, I don't know. But when you see the Christ symbolism again, Christ was kind of symbolic of the union of these two ideas, the union of these two versions of yourself, the cross of the brain, the physical cross of matter.
Yeah. Well, as I was saying before, like they're intentionally, like where we are right now in 2024, it's not like they're doing whatever they can to hide all of this information from anybody, because I learned most of the stuff just by watching the programming, so that's how obvious and blatant it all is. So I see them intentionally trying to steer this new age ascension. And I'm not gonna
Look at Jay
correctly predict.
Dreamers is in the chat too. So we got Jay Dreamers and Universal Magic Man, two of my favorite decoders, who should just be in this in this video with us right now, because I'm having a hard time keeping my train of thought, and I'm trying to just not steal everything that they're saying. But yeah, so sorry, keep going. I cut you off.
No, you're good. But yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess you can make an argument that it could be something literal, like you were saying. And then I also wonder too how much of it is just a metaphor for just the general, programming and the way that they're steering people.
Mm.
But I would lean towards it being some real actual thing. But I don't know. It also links to topics that I'm not sure if I could bring up on your show or not. But
well, let's link it back to the Super Bowl, because I mean we could just talk about Travis Scott alone like we've done already.
I was just gonna hop over to Taylor Swift and then.
Oh yeah, let's do it for sure. There's tons of meat to chew on there.
Right. So we were talking beforehand about how a lot of these matchups are set in stone beforehand, and because I know other decoders out there who correctly predicted that the Chiefs would make it to the Super Bowl this year, even though they didn't have their best season in the regular season. And the reason why they felt that way is just for the ritual side of things, because when you're watching these games, it's like these Chiefs games, it's like a reality show.
The focus is a lot on Taylor Swift and less on the game, right?
Yeah. It's actually shocking how often they pan to her during the game just to watch her cheer. Not that I don't understand it, but it's still crazy. But yeah, so I actually did a thread previously on Taylor Swift's last album called Midnights. And again, it's everything that we've been talking about. So she looks into the mirror, she sees an alternate version of herself. She talks about being the anti-hero. It's funny because I saw someone on ESPN the other day called Travis Kelce the anti-hero too. So, but yeah, and so it's again, like this stuff is so blatant. Like, where is this?
Yeah, and going kind of back, for the people tuning in, talking about etymology, just like we did with Usher, you can do the same with Taylor Swift. And many of these famous celebrities, actors, athletes, it's quite a statistical anomaly when you just look at these people. They're kind of in the forefront, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, on and on and on. But Taylor Swift, I mean, it's like, Taylor is many things, a shaper of reality, so to say. A stonemason was also known as a Taylor. And Swift. Swift is another name of a bird. And as I had mentioned to you privately, the Swift was an omen for an ill will, an ill omen, a bad sign. So you have a Taylor, again, shaping reality, so to say, shaping the mind, the projection, and Swift, kind of an ill omen. And then that may sound a bit out there, but you watch enough of Taylor Swift's music videos. We talk a lot about this privately, but we've mentioned a little bit here, these altars, right? Tell us about Taylor Swift and the symbolism again before I cut you off. You're seeing. I agree with it. The games they make Taylor Swift in the NFL has like been a unanimous talking point for going on a year now. And that's more than just coincidental. Don't you agree?
Oh yeah. Yeah. 100%. I mean, I actually, based on everything that I've looked at, and I'm not going to expect to convince anybody of this during this video, but I think that a lot of these celebrity relationships actually serve as handlers for the other person. And they're like it's like a way for them to bring more people, into the club per se.
Yeah.
And yeah, but so, I mean, like I said, like it's all just super blatant. She literally gets in the coffin and they have like a funeral for her during this video. And then she gets out of the coffin still alive. And they put lyrics of the song, P.S. There is no secret encoded message that means something else. Love, Taylor. Like it's like humorous for them. And I don't even know. I mean, I don't even know if Taylor's writing the lyrics, you know what I mean? But whoever is.
Right. And again, the endless links with names and that these people however you want to look at it, purposely chosen by some ruling power or some corrupted power, or this is just part of the way that this kind of subconscious reality is kind of transfigured or comes into fruition through the mental faculties, right? The kind of subconscious the tailoring, right? You look at just Travis Kelsey, right? Travis, um, if I'm not mistaken, is like a gatekeeper, or
Oh, what Travis means to traverse, to cross, right?
yeah,
So
to cross over, right? And was a toll collector or something like that. I need to pull up etymology again, but um, etymology is a powerful thing, and anytime you get these kind of characters who pop up, it's amazing the things you'll find when you just break down the meaning of the words being used. Sorry, go ahead.
no, you're good. And there's something to what you're saying there with Travis Kelsey too that I haven't quite cracked the code on yet. Because I remember last year the big theme of the Super Bowl was that the two Kelsey brothers were facing off. Jason Kelsey on the Eagles, Travis Kelsey on the Chiefs, and then they started their podcast right around that time, which got really, really popular. And the next thing you know, Travis is dating Taylor Swift and he's a celebrity and they're popular on YouTube. And they have Jason Kelsey retires and now they have their career set up post football. Again, I don't claim to know exactly what's going on with all that, but that's worth looking into. But I guess I don't know. I guess the next thing I could bring up with Taylor Swift is what song was it? So now it might take me a second to find, but yeah, I might just need a second. But I was going to show that in this one music video for this album, and it is this video too. So she actually, oh, here it is. Yeah, so she becomes a giant in this video. And you sent me a thing about the word NFL, the abbreviation NFL, linking it to the word Nephilim.
Yeah, in
And
the old, I've shared this post a bunch of times over the years, but in the old Obri Hebrew dictionary, NFL means Nephilim. And you just look at the team names for some of these NFL teams. Obviously, it's not a stretch, but yeah,
yeah,
symbolism is all over it, right? So what do we have here with her being a giant?
well, I don't know. Honestly, I was just curious, like, because people have their different opinions. Like, when you think about the Nephilim, like, do you have any, breakdown of it that would differ from anything else you would hear out there?
Well, yeah, people often make the giant reference, and again, that's probably one of the most notable things about my channel, aside from, anything to do with decoding or kind of the bridging the gap between subconscious and conscious reality. But yeah, Nephilim, it also meant like noble ones, and it was a reference to again, the fallen angels or giants or several of these other things. But we could all be fallen angels in a sense. Again, uh, the references I made to Saturn and the kind of astrological reference to mankind, and again this hero's journey that we reference, and that Saturn ate his children, right? The scythe consumed his children in a physical matter, kind of ties into the same idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a million ways to look at it. But just look at the NFL, team names and NFL Nephilim. I'm not the first person to make this reference, but I'll try to pull up the book while you're talking to show people the actual reference.
Okay. Well, the next thing I was going to bring up might actually be a pivot. So, but I remember last year Rihanna during the Super Bowl, right? That was when she revealed that she was pregnant. Like everyone realized that she was pregnant at that time. And in that original Rihanna video that I showed previously, there were a lot of references to these entities that were watching from a different realm.
Right.
And yeah. And so I feel like there was some implication there.
Yeah, the Phoenix symbology with Rihanna, it exists in a lot of her material. The rebirth, the altar symbolism is really strong with hers as well.
Yeah, and I remember so she opened up Taylor Swift opened up her Eras tour. It wasn't Phoenix, but it was so Glendale changed the name temporarily to Swift City. Right? So she started her tour where last year's Super Bowl was, like the Phoenix area, and they literally, symbolically changed the name, representing, like, I guess, the symbolic rebirth of the city itself. And yeah, so I guess the next thing I was going to shift to with Taylor Swift, unless you wanted to read what you were pulling up.
Oh, sure. I'll just share real quick here. This is a book called The Genius and Spirit of the Hebrew Bible. You can find it online, archive.org, as I've said a million times, has a great copy of it. Nothing too crazy. But yeah, this is a book written in the 1800s, early 1800s. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. My apologies. And of course, I'm going to lose the page. I was close. So Nephilim of the Jews, the nobles and apostates, great men of the Titans. Again, the giant Titan team references, and devils deriving from NFL, to fall and fail. But Nephilim means also tortoises, and they might be the turtle nation of yore, admitted in all mythologies from Persia to China and America. But in a bad sense, it also means toads. That was really it there.
Yeah, I still thought it was crazy when you showed me that, though. Again, just because I remember that.
But yeah, so that's another fabulous source for really interesting, taking away the vowels, and it's really crazy the words you get and the correlations you can make. And if you have a good Bible, especially a good Hebrew Bible, where that's the main mode of definition, it's nuts. These kind of 3-letter agencies, I would say, all go back to kind of this older language, and the Hebrew dictionary, Old Hebrew especially, is a powerful tool for kind of doing these types of things we're doing. But yeah, back to what you were showing here. Taylor considers number 13 to be her lucky number.
Yeah. So, and this is a very well-known thing for anyone that knows Taylor Swift. That's just how often she brings it up. So I could just read this here. So Swift stated in an interview, "I was born on the 13th. I turned 13 on Friday the 13th. My first album went gold in 13 weeks. Also, my first song that ever went number 1. It had a 13-second intro. I didn't even do that on purpose. Every time I've won an award at an award show, I've either been seated in the 13th row or row M, which is the 13th letter. We're going to go in 13 seconds. And I'm sorry, 1 second. My mouse is acting weird for some reason. But yeah, so that was just one quote right there, but it goes on, like 13 blocks, unreleased song, but yeah, people go deep on this. And of course people relate the number 13 to witchcraft, right? And I'm curious because I have my own link with the number 13 right now, but I don't know if I should say mine first or if I want to hear yours, but the 13 is definitely prevalent in the Super Bowl because it's Super Bowl 58. 5 + 8 is 13. It's the Chiefs versus the 49ers. 4 + 9, 13.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Taylor Swift. So I don't know. Before I say what I think, do you have an opinion on that?
I mean, it's just kind of the whole theme of this show we're doing together, the blending of kind of like Neo seeing the Matrix, so to say, that this reality of ours is shaped subconsciously. And the more you exercise that part of your brain, the more these things kind of stand out. And once you make all these correlations, how many do you need to make statistically before it becomes in probability that all of these coincidences, so to say, are pointing directly towards, especially these big events. And now, again, whether we want to chalk it up to, Illuminati or Freemasons or anything like that, I would sort more towards the kind of subconscious nature of things, and that um, these kind of, again, making the Neo reference, room 101, class 101, intro to
Oh, this.
the
Wait,
subconscious
can I cut you
mind.
off?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So Usher actually did like like the Elvis like extended residency tour or whatever it's called in
Right.
like a single location in Vegas, and he's done 100 shows, and then the Super Bowl is going to be his 101st show.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, but I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
think that he planned all this out, and then Taylor planned all of this out, and that he played 100 shows just perfectly timed out so he could do his 101st show. I mean, again, like, and the Usher name, the album art, the tour date, yeah, it gets pretty insane. The further down this kind of rabbit hole, so to say, you go, and I just find that making that kind of Neo reference, as he's standing there and watching reality again kind of dissolve away, and the kind of binary esque world reveals itself. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah. So this was something that I had thought could be the case a while ago, and again, like as time goes on, like all the programming just strengthens my belief. So I believe the number 13 here is a reference to Mary Magdalene as the 13th disciple.
Okay.
And Mary Magdalene also serving this Isis rebirth role that I've been talking about throughout this video.
Yeah.
Because Mary Magdalene was the one, waiting outside for Jesus, right? Yeah, and then people talk about Mary Magdalene as like the mother of like the modern day mysteries, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like all of these rebirth process. Yeah, so I don't know, and yeah, again, like it's all just meant to, as you've said so many times throughout this thing, just like deliver these messages into the subconscious. But then, like I said too, like I also wonder, like if she hypothetically is Travis Kelce's handler, like that archetypal role, theoretically would fit if they're having some sort of influence over these people in these celebrity relationships and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, no coincidence. Again, we were touching just lightly on only a few of the things that we've come across that, a short amount of time that we can present to you guys. And ultimately, it's one of those things where you just kind of have to start working these things into your own life, and you'll start to see the kind of veil that exists in reality. And you could dive so deep down a million different rabbit holes, whether it's symbology or numerology or consciousness in a whole. What is consciousness? What is the inner voice? How does language actually work when it comes to visually representing? Because everything is produced in our mind is an image, but through transliteration and the picturing of images as words, these things kind of have changed quite drastically. And what is language? The creation of language, the kind of mystical nature of the Tower of Babel, especially when you think of it as a story of consciousness, human consciousness, not necessarily as a literal event. And that, like, the Super Bowl is a kind of a living representation of the collective. And as I kind of so hastily represented that, I certainly am not saying one way or the other, but whether there's some evil enterprise conspiring to align all of these stars so perfectly for this date, I don't necessarily think that's the way it works. I think that in a way, the story, the Christ story, the solar eclipse, these kind of symbolical representations of humans and consciousness, and, the sun and the moon and the goddess, and they all play a part in defining the way our subconscious mind pictures reality, and in a sense creates reality. And that these events, in a way, I think, can be kind of used as a rudder, and they steer, whether manipulated by a specific set of individuals or it's a collective thing. It's really up for you to decide, but off on another tangent I go there. But yeah, ultimately, again, just showing the nature and the insanity, really, when you look at just the sheer number of these kind of coincidental circumstances that all coalesce to create this one specific event on this one specific day, and how it correlates and connects with a million other events, the solar eclipse, a musical concert, Usher playing his 101st show, all of those things. Just a few of these things we're presenting to you guys is really a drop in the bucket, because you could have 100 different people that make this kind of analysis of these types of events their specialty, like Universal Magic Man or Jay Dreamers, just for instance. And they have so many hundreds of hours of work put into decoding different events, but they'll find, I guarantee you, if we were all together just talking about the things we found and our methods for doing so, they'd all be very similar. But yeah, I'm going to do too much talking. So we're getting close to our 90 minutes. So I want to, without rushing, proceed with kind of the rest of the direction that you had as far as where you wanted to go with this discussion, and any more dots you wanted to connect before we call it a night.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that that pretty much finished what I was gonna say about that, and I obviously have more content, but none of it would be quick enough to fit in real quick. So I'm cool calling it here, and for now, for sure.
So kind of as a synopsis, right? We're talking about this weekend is going to be Super Bowl. What is it? 58. 58. And it's going to be kind of one of those world stage events that the more eyes on this event, the more I think that rudder will have a bigger effect. The bigger the eyes, the bigger the effect. And kind of the rudder is in the kind of consciousness ocean, so to say. And that, just like the Olympics and all these other things that we're so used to, other people out there doing these kind of breakdowns on the symbolical nature being used, that this is one of those events. And kind of priming you guys, the audience, and again, thank you everybody for being here, and priming you guys that, I've seen a lot of comments, people don't like sports, and that it's just some kind of satanic ritual event. Again, I'm not trying to, and neither is Psy, convince you guys of anything. We're just showing you interesting things that we've come across over the years, and that maybe you can just watch this event, again, with that kind of third party out of body mind, and see the symbolical things being presented, because the trick with any magical experience is that being aware of it is kind of what sets you apart from it, that you
Exactly.
are
Yeah.
essentially unaffected. Not that I'm saying that this has an effect on people one way or another, but sports certainly have a way of drumming up pretty incredible emotions from people. I would say sports, it's so divisive, and you have teams against teams and cities against cities, and all of these kind of waging war type events, um, and what kind of effect that has on consciousness. And again, a rabbit hole that maybe me and you will dive down, the history of sports and more of its kind of psychological representations. But yeah, as a synopsis, we're kind of priming you for the game on Sunday. And, I'm hoping that we get some pretty cool comments in the chat or in the video after the Super Bowl, leading up to the Super Bowl, things you guys have seen, things you witnessed, or things that stood out to you. And we can kind of pool all these things together. And then we'll all be watching the Super Bowl together. And I'm sure all of us will notice different things here and there. And we can come together again, after the fact, and pool some of these comments and things other people noticed and things that me and you noticed, and kind of come back for a part two, and talk a little bit more about what we saw, and tie maybe some more audience stuff into all this. And yeah, so appreciate everybody being here. It's been, over a month since I did a video, and I've talked about this and made some posts on my YouTube channel and in comment form, but I had to basically rebuild my entire computer and streaming service, and the laptop I had been using to run this channel, I use for work, and it's a family computer, so those kind of three roads had diverged, and there was kind of a collision in priorities, so I had to basically start from scratch and rebuild everything. So I've got a whole new computer microphone set up, and was super excited. And I don't think there's a coincidence that whom I haven't talked with in a while, finally messaged me out of nowhere, and we were able to make this work. I think it's kind of perfect timing, and I hope you guys are kind of tickled by what he's presented here, and you give him a follow on Twitter. We'll have it in the description. But yeah, he's also starting a YouTube channel, so this will be his first episode. Yeah, so why don't you tell everybody where they can find you? Give them your information for Twitter, and what you plan to do with your YouTube video or YouTube channel. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'll just pull it up. Yeah, I mean, like he said, Ben, went through his own hiatus, and then I went through my hiatus too. So I actually haven't really tweeted recently, but yeah, I'm definitely jumping back in full force and taking everything to another level, because when I went through my whole rebirth process, I realized that if I had just gone the traditional route of just, reading the same books that everyone's read and everything like that, like it would have taken me years and years to provide anything of value that wasn't already out there. So that's why I decided to go this route, and just, notice all these patterns and everything. And, starting these videos here is going to be crucial, because, some people help me out. Like, Ben, for example, like I DM him questions sometimes, and he'll answer me, but, again, this is my first video, so just getting to talk to everyone and having, multiple inputs on what all of these patterns mean, because that's the thing too. It's like a lot of times the patterns are indisputable, and then the conclusions of what the patterns mean could be debatable, or there's like layers to what they mean.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's where you kind of, your own opinions can shape the information being presented. And that's what I think I love so much about this, is that identifying the pattern is pretty much undeniable. statistically when you find these things and when you start to notice the patterns. And what you take away from it all is really up to you, but really just to have fun with it. And yeah, that's how me and you became friends. And if this is something you guys are interested in, again, I know it's outside the norm for my channel. Please be sure to give him a follow. I mean, this is his bread and butter. He's got thread after thread after thread that provide you with, 10 minutes to 100 hours of really incredible and interesting deep dives into all kinds of different social events and the symbolical nature of these things. And I can't thank him enough, and kind of flexing that symbolical nature of the human mind. It's a muscle, and the more you use it, the better you get at these things, and the clearer these things become, and the more they pop out to you. And
Yeah,
I can't thank you enough for being here. I'm grateful. It was obviously meant to be, the timing. And are you going to be posting anything else leading up? Are you going to put a thread together for the Super Bowl for some of these people listening that they can go look at and have more of kind of a reference to some of these things you've been showing? Or what do you think?
the game plan that I'm looking at right now is, I used to, he wasn't lying. Like I used to have some threads that were like hundreds of tweets long and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I feel like it's kind of redundant to make the thread and the video. So
Sure.
the route that I'm looking at now is compiling everything in a video form. And like I was just saying, like it'll help too, because I can get, the analysis from people like you who can explain, 99% of the stuff better than I can. So, and that's why I feel like, people like us are a great combo because, people might see my content and think like, whereas like the literature or like the everything to back up what he's saying, and then people see like your news articles and say like, oh, you believe these news articles from so long ago, like, and then you see like how prevalent this stuff is modern day to people who shouldn't even know about these things, and it, that should be enough right there for everyone to start thinking.
Yeah, well said. And again, breaking down the symbolical nature of reality, whether it's movies, film, music videos, Super Bowls, whatever. I think it's quite an incredible and interesting niche, and it's something I've been involved with for over a decade, and again, it certainly is what brought us together. And I really look forward to part 2, where we come back after the Super Bowl, with plenty of things to talk about, I'm sure, and see what came of some of these things we mentioned to you guys. And I'm sure more information will, more interesting correlations will come to the surface, and we'll be able to share those with you. And so, yeah, guys, stay tuned for a part 2, and be sure to check out PsyClops on Twitter. Again, hundreds of hours, if that's something you're interested in, worth of material to dive into. And his new YouTube channel, which it's right there on screen, the NDE Experience. So yeah,
Yep.
Thanks everybody for joining us. Good to be back. And be sure to give Cy a follow on those 2 platforms he shared. And anything you want to say before we end the stream?
No, I just want to say thank you, and thanks to everyone listening. And yeah, like, obviously, I'm gonna, try to figure out how to get these videos as streamlined as possible, because I know there were like, a little breakups in switching from one topic to another, but we'll figure it out. We'll be okay. But yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe's asking for links. I will have links in the descriptions. I shared them on video here. The NDE Experience, right? ND Experience, E being the first letter of experience, is his Twitter and his YouTube.
Yes.
So you can search those on either platform and you'll find them. And stay tuned for a part 2 after the Super Bowl. And I hope some of you guys leave some interesting comments about the things you saw, and look forward to doing this again. Love you guys so much. Have a wonderful night, guys.